Let's wait a while before we go too far. That's right. That's right. A little Janet Jackson for you tonight, everybody. Hello, hello. Welcome to the Astound Yourself Dating Show. My name is Richard Francois. I am your dating strategist. And if you've noticed, there is a pretty face missing from the show tonight. Elaine is en route, so she will be joining us at some point this evening. Well, that's what we're hoping at least. She is en route. Everything is fine. She just was running an important errand and has not made it home yet. Meanwhile, you are here with me, your other favorite host, Richard Francois, and I have a special guest with me tonight. Now, why did I pick that song about waiting a while? I'm not suggesting that you all just pretend to be virgins again. That's not what I'm suggesting. I am suggesting that there may be a particular timeline to things, a particular order to things. And tonight we're going to discuss the dating timeline as presented by none other than my friend Gerald Manning. Now, what makes Gerald an expert? What gives him the right to talk about a dating timeline? Well, for one thing, Gerald has himself dated. He is a father to three beautiful daughters. And he also has a degree. I'll let him know exactly what it is so I don't get it wrong, but it's one of the ologies: sociology, psychology. It's a degree in human behavior. So Gerald has studied human behavior enough to be able to know what he's talking about, and he combines psychology, sociology, and one more ology together to deliver the goods in a package that is unique and interesting and palatable to his audience. He is also very active and involved in his church and his ministry, where he offers his wisdom from the perspective of the Bible. So you may hear one or two Bible verses here tonight. You can look forward to that. Without any more intros or explanations, I want to bring Gerald. Oh, look who just joined us. Gerald is here, and also our fabulous Elaine Saunders has made it on. So hello, Gerald, and hello, Elaine. And you can just wave hi and say hello. We'll get Gerald to be formally introduced to you after the show. But Gerald, this is Elaine. Elaine, this is Gerald.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello. What's up, good people? How we doing?
So happy to have you on. I've been following you on Facebook.
Why, thank you. Why, thank you. I've been reading your comments. Thank you for following me. Richard is a good friend of mine. We go way back. Richard, I think it's about 10 plus years, right? Somewhere around there.
Yeah, because I started that job where you and I met, like right when I moved to Massachusetts. That was over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That was like right around 2010.
He still had a little more hair on his head at that time. He was.
Yes, I'm sure I did. It takes a lot less maintenance now.
I've never seen him with hair on his head, so consider yourself lucky.
He was a young sprite. He was a young sprite back then.
No, now I just I'm young sounding sometimes.
There you go. There you go.
Sometimes. So Joe, I'm really happy to have you on our show tonight to talk about the dating timeline. I didn't get to be at the Zoom event where you shared it. So for one, I get to be caught up and get the condensed version of it. But two, I think that it's something that's important for our audience to be introduced to, as many of our audience members are dating uh, for the first time in this way. When many of the people that watch our show dated before, there wasn't the internet and the swiping, all this abundance or even overwhelming amount of information being thrown at them, and in such little time to make a decision. The swiping left, swiping right. It was a different time where people maybe met at a party or met at a bar, and you didn't have 5,000 options from all around the globe on your little screen. You really had to put in some work to meet somebody. So before you said, hey, it's over, you really also had to put some thought in, is this worth it being over or not? So it's a
Correct.
different time now. It's a very different time. So I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say about the dating timeline. But first, tell people what got you involved in in the ministry specifically with singles? Why did you pick that as the way to direct your ministry?
So let me give you a little disclaimer and background, right?
Sure.
I am a minister of the gospel, pursuant to pastorship and everything else that is involved in ministry and ministering to a group of people. What led up to being in charge of this particular ministry or facilitating this particular ministry was my own singleness and my, I guess, very cautious and fastidious nature of how I approach things, particularly coming out of divorce and, you know, thinking of the weight and magnitude of the decisions that were made to get there and the ramifications of that, right? So for me, it was critical and important to help individuals parse through not rushing into another situation, particularly when they're hurt, they're lonely, they're desiring to be with someone, whether it's through anxiety, whether it's through attachment issues or their attachment style. You know, there are many different myriad of reasons why people rush into a relationship, even if it's to anesthetize certain conditions within themselves. You know, I was seeing a lot of that as I was dating. I was encountering a lot of it. And I was approached by my church to say, you know, hey, you're single. You seem to have your stuff together. You're teaching, you're doing this, you're doing that. And you're a minister of the gospel. Would you be interested in facilitating this group? We're looking to restart, you know, this young group within our church. And I was like, sure, why not? And that's how it started. But prior to that, basically the work I was doing was helping people parse through their childhood trauma, right? If you haven't worked through your childhood trauma, it will, and I'm not saying this as a guess or, you know, maybe it will, it definitely will matriculate into your adult relationships. And when I say adult relationships, not just your love-based relationships, all of your relationships, your familial, your professional, your platonic relationships, the relationships you have with people in society and community, it is just going to affect you. So my work, most of my work, and still to today, the work that I do is in helping people, you know, parse through those issues from their childhood. I help them to go back into that space that's uncomfortable, that space that is terrifying, that nobody wants to go back into because it's awkward and it's scary and there's a lot of trauma attached to it. And I guide them and I walk them through that really painful place to help them go back to that inner child that's been, you know, damaged and broken and just hiding in a dungeon way in the repressed parts of their mind, being tormented by all that trauma. That child needs to be rescued. So, you know, as a child, when the trauma happens to you, you have no tools. You don't know how to deal with it. But as you become an adult, you start to begin to navigate those areas and have the tools. But instead of going back, you're too scared. So I pair the adult and the child and help them go back to that inner child, hold that child's hand and talk to that child and deal with those challenges so that they're better at interpersonal relationships on every level. And the one level that it most obviously comes out is the people that are closest to us, right? So it's either your familiar relationships, where you have people that trigger you the most, or in your love-based relationships, where people know you and you're vulnerable in certain spaces because they know things about you that nobody else does.
Yes.
And they trigger, you know, the living daylight out of that child and that's being tormented. So, you know, if you're not healed in that area, you know, having a relationship, you're setting yourself up for failure as well as your partner. So we spend a lot of time going through stuff. And, you know, every year I reset and I go through the dating cycle. So what we're doing currently is revising our dating timeline because of things like COVID, which has totally transmorphed the landscape of how people date, right? How we communicate, how we connect. It has opened us up to be even deeper and more introspective because we were spending a lot of alone time with ourselves and dealing with all our own demons, right? And seeing others, right? So, you know, there were, you know, spikes in divorce rates, spikes in domestic violence rates, you know, spiked in all sorts of issues that happened with people that were living in close quarters, but didn't realize they had all these problems and issues. So when we did the timeline a year and a half ago, COVID really wasn't a thing. So now that COVID is a thing, what I do is the community that I have is I keep it as an open, breathing, living document. So it's nothing that's set in stone. It's a guideline. If you're over 40 and you've dated before, you're married or you're divorced, there are certain things you may not need to do on this timeline because you're a little more mature. You've experienced life. You've made some sound decisions. That's not to say, however, that there are some 40-year-olds that just don't parse through or think about decisions, right? Why am I always with the same guy? Or why do I always pick the same type of girl? It's because you're skipping some steps. And when you skip these steps, this is what's going to happen. On top of that, compounded with you're not working on your own issues. If you're not even doing the basics, which is to follow some guidelines that will safeguard you making some mistakes that you're prone to based on your trauma, then what's going to happen, right? It's just obvious that you're going to fall into a ditch. So, there are people that are in their adult age that still make these mistakes as they're, the 20-year-olds who really haven't had that experience in life yet to know how to discern and to know how to make wiser decisions. Go ahead.
To think about it, thanks. So to think about it, it sounds like, in a way, the dating timeline could be used as a user's guide to dating. It's not the only one, but it's a possible user's guide to dating. So if dating has not been working as well as we'd like it to, this is a possible guide to take a look at, especially if something that is faith-based is something that you're open to. Exactly.
And that's why I revised the name of it. It used to just say dating timeline. Now it says dating timeline / punctuated by guideline. So I want people to understand that it is a guideline. It is not concrete, right? Everyone's scenario is different. Everyone's approaching it from a different station in life. So you're not going to be in the same space where everyone else is that you can, follow it step by step by step. You may have already advanced past some steps, or you may be behind some steps when you have to catch up. So it's really just a way to help you gauge certain things and kind of just double check. Did I do this way? Or did I miss something, right? So just a safe guide, if you will, a safety guide to say, well, did I rush into something here? Or did I miss thinking or calculating this one thing in this scenario?
So to me, it makes sense when you brought up the age issue, because with age does come experience.
Not wisdom necessarily, right?
That was my next point is with age doesn't always come what I call emotional maturity.
Or emotional intelligence.
Intelligence and maturity. It's both, maturity, because they're not intelligent or they don't have they haven't found themselves spiritually at a place where they can be mature or the experience, it's the lies they tell themselves sometimes.
Yeah. A lot of it is they're anesthetizing, right? They're using
the lies they tell themselves, to remain in relationships that aren't healthy or spiritually correct, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and with that, you have to do some soul searching and come to terms spiritually and intellectually and emotionally. So you need guidance to stay on this timeline, I'm guessing. So I can't wait to hear it.
So, I mean, if you think about it, for those that are spiritual, right? You're a human being with a soul, with a spirit, and with a body. So you're comprised of basically three parts, right? And you're not all one. So you're not just all the physical. You're not just all the spiritual all the time. And that's why I use psychology and theology, combine the two of them together, because that's the approach Jesus used, that he didn't really hit anybody over the head with a Bible, right? He never did that. That wasn't his principle, his practice, or his style.
Is it because the Bible wasn't written yet? Is that why he didn't do that?
Well, the Old Testament was written, right? So he didn't hit you with a stone tablet over your head, right?
I was going to say that would be a rock of some sort.
Right, exactly. He spoke to you in a manner that approached you at your station in life, right? And I love to use the example of the woman that was accused of, idolatry. I'm sorry, having an affair, and the whole community gathered to stone her to death. Right? Yeah. He. That's the law. That was the law that that was inscribed for Moses. That's what you're supposed to do, right? But when he came, he said, "Look." He really didn't say anything to anyone that was standing there. He just kneeled down in front of the whole crowd and wrote in the dirt, "The one of you without sin," right? The one of you that hasn't made a mistake, hasn't made a bad choice, hasn't done something that was stupid, is perfect, is beyond reproach. That one can throw the stone, right? And he just confounded their thought process. Right? He didn't quote any scripture, right? He didn't damn them to hell. He didn't do anything like that. He just literally used psychology to help them to think differently about how the principle of having an affair, how that affects the community, right?
Like holding a mirror to the people's faces and saying, "Okay, look over here." And if you like, if there's nothing, if it's flawless here, then go ahead. But otherwise, really take a look and see where, where this could be you. Very good. So because our time is limited, I want to talk some about the dating timeline. Let's put the first point up about the dating timeline. I think there were a few points that our producer Carla put up for us. So that's timeline guideline. What's the first point? Intentional dating. What is intentional dating, Gerald?
So again, we're working on revising it, but when we wrote this, intentional dating had 3 parts to it. Mm-hmm. It was a sifting process, which was the first part, right? Yeah. So sometimes you go out on multiple dates and you're kind of sifting through to determine the person that's most compatible with you, right? Mm-hmm. You can either do that through the social media process and in texting and phone calls. I don't encourage necessarily, having multiple, options on the table at once, but sometimes that's what presents itself to somebody, right? You have multiple suitors that are coming and they may approach you and you're just going out on a casual date. It's just getting to know people.
So you encourage going on one date with one person at a time, even in this age?
Some people do. And even in that time, you're still sifting out the individual, right?
Right.
Sifting them out to see if they align with you and your structure of belief, your structure of understanding, your lifestyle. You're just doing the sifting process. You're taking them from, you ever see them sift a basket and they're from rocks to sand to pebbles. So you're taking them through that refining process to see what's going to come out in the end. And if nothing comes out at the end, then obviously you move on. We're not a great part, we're not a great connection, we don't align, or you move on to the next partner that presents themselves, right?
So there is people who have a sifting process that's so strict that nothing comes out, like there's nothing that goes through the sifter, like it's not even a sifter, it's a paper filter and nothing goes through.
That's why I'm still single. Sometimes you can't have too high and stringent standards, right? Mm-hmm. But you have to know your deal breakers, right? And your deal breakers, in this stage, you know them, but you don't necessarily have to apply them because this is the beginning stage. And trust me, particularly now with COVID, 0 to 6 months is exactly the amount of time you're going to take to date someone, right? To really kind of understand, because it wasn't like you could go anywhere, right? So most of your dating was done in some virtual form or another, right? Whether it's through text, Skype, Zoom, and there was one in a while occasion where you could meet someone in public, you don't know if they were vaccinated, if you're vaccinated. So there was challenges to expedite this process and make it faster, to how it was prior to COVID, right? You go on 5 or 4 dates, you go on a date, hey, we're going to meet up next week. So within a month, you might have seen them twice or 3 times in that month. Now with COVID, and I think post-COVID, we're going to do a lot more in, sifting and going maybe 1 date a month, right? So it may take longer to do this sifting process. But to be honest, if the person's worth their salt, right? If their character is worth their salt, they're not going to fall through the process, right? They're going to be interested in you. You're going to be interested in them, and you're going to continue the communication. And then it moves on to the next stage where it just gets deeper. Now you start to do some more work.
And what stage is that?
The next stage is the investigative dating stage.
Oh, so this is when they
Sounds
start
like more
looking to
fun.
see what your past girlfriends and boyfriends are. Is that it? Or when they ask for your credit
Well,
score?
yeah. So in the first stage, you start to learn more about the individual, and particularly more than what has been revealed, right?
Okay.
So in the early sifting stage, you met their representative. You met the person that they wanted to meet.
Now you
Right?
verify the information.
Yes, right? Now you're doing
representative.
that check, right? Now you're
Okay.
like, he said in the first couple of months that he was so and so. He was very patient. But every time I show up 5 to 6 minutes late, he seems to be perturbed. He's not very patient, right? So now you're doing the investigation, and you're looking for more than what they showed you up front. Everybody's going to put their best foot forward, right? You know, very few people are going to show up and say, hey, I'm divorced. I really make bad choices. Sometimes, you know, I kick my dog, and I get angry a lot. You know, no one's going to show up on a date.
Everybody knows the cat is the one that's supposed to be kicked. Why would you kick your dog?
Oh
So
my
cat lovers,
goodness.
calm down. This is called a joke on the internet, okay? Calm down.
That's right.
Go ahead,
That's right.
Joe.
You get some of those cat people. Yo, there's a documentary on Netflix about the cat people. You gotta be careful. They're gonna come after you.
I'm telling you.
So after you've done, you start that process. You start probing a little bit deeper, and then you may ask the question, if you're a believer, to do something that is part of your fundamental, right? Your structure. And so for my group, we're Christians. So this is why I asked them to pose a question. Would you like to pray with me once a week? Right?
Okay.
If you're not a
would you like to get baptized? That's the first question.
no, not yet. If you're not a believer, right? But you take doing yoga, or you take going on nature walks, or doing something that really centers you and it's a part of your discipline.
Yeah.
You find out if they're willing to be invited in that space, if they want to move in that space, right? Because now you're starting to see.
Is that a deal breaker at that point, or is it something you're seeing how we navigate it, even if we're different?
Right. So you're investigating, right? This isn't your deal breakers just got to the next level, right? You're just starting to introduce some of the more key principal parts of you and your lifestyle to see whether or not they fit in, right? So for believers, having a prayer life is a big part of their life, right? So that's why it's important to introduce it early, because you don't want to surprise someone with something like that, right? When you're attached, emotions are connected, and everything's all settled. Now you drop the bomb on them. This is what I do. And if you don't do it, then, I don't think we can be compatible, right? You don't want to wait that long. So you introduce it at an early stage to see engage where they're at, because you're investigating. Are they malleable? Are they willing to work with you, right? Well, I really know how to pray. Okay, would you be willing to just listen, or, just, let me show you how? And then you find out if they're, that person is, agreeable in that manner. And if they're not, you say, okay, all right. You do your little check. You just check off your list. You say, okay, that's on the yes side, or yes on the no side. You just check it off and you keep going. And then there you have the next stage. Courtship, compatibility, and counseling.
The
right?
3 C's. So before we delve into that, I just want to say hello to some people. Normally we say hello to the people who are watching the show. We haven't done that yet. And so I just want to pause for a second, say hello to, and see if we have any comments. Rosa is one of our recurring viewers, one of our regular viewers. So hello, Rosa. Thank you for watching the show. We also have Carla with us, who's
hi, Rosa.
really working to help the show happen and watching. All right. And I see a couple of comments from Elaine saying, hey, just drop us a comment. So Elaine's doing double duty as well. And Gordon at one point said that it was freezing. I hope that that's better because I haven't seen any new comments from you, Gordon, saying it keeps freezing. Oh, actually, that was recent, that comment. So
Yeah, I don't know if
um,
that's us or him.
I'm sorry, but we seem to be fine over here. It's possible it's the connection where you are, Gordon. Maybe try resetting it or watching it from a different device. I don't know, but do some troubleshooting because we don't seem to have a freezing issue here. But thanks for watching and thanks for letting us know. So we don't have any
Yeah, because
questions
I don't see it on this
from the
side.
viewers. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what the next stage is, the three C's.
Yeah, so the 3 C's is when your relationship has gone to the next level, right? So
Yes.
you're now in the place of exclusivity, right? You're now exclusive. It's just you and this partner. They've already revealed their true identity. You kind of know who they are. You're understanding their character build up, and all of that. And now you're starting to build foundations together as a unit, right? You're starting to move towards a thinking process as two as one and not individually anymore. And then you're starting to do the last stage, which is managing through conflicts. This is an important stage. So courtship, compatibility, and counseling. So the courtship is the exclusivity. The compatibility is their identity lining up with yours and your style, building the foundation. And then the counseling is managing through conflicts. This is when you start to notice, there's differences between the two of you and that you need help. You need expert help, right? You don't try to work all of these things out within your own relationship. It's not healthy.
So I have a thought here. I'm really glad you're bringing this up because there are people in relationships, so the relationship gets to a point. I know I've had this happen, where it gets to a point where we're like, I don't know, I'm out of tools. I don't know what to do here. I'm out of ideas. I don't feel the same way anymore. The spark is gone.
Right.
Does this mean this is it for us? And then often as a last effort before calling it quits, well, let's try therapy. Let's do counseling together.
It's too late.
And I know for many couples, they think, well, that means something is wrong or something is broken or I'm a failure if we're doing counseling. And what you just presented that's just one of the stages. It actually does not represent any individual poorly that they're experiencing counseling. Is just one of the stages of the relationship that they're in. It's a sign of growth, actually, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, and hold on 1 second. Let me plug my computer in before it dies on me. The reason
dying computers.
The reason that's important is there's a theory called the top down, right? In a relationship, if there's one partner that has all the tools or is always pushing for using certain tools, there's a top-down dynamic where there's an upper hand, right? And the person that doesn't have the tools or the one that's being talked to or talked at all the time, there's an imbalance there, right? And they're going to build resentment at some point in the relationship. And passive aggressiveness starts to build within that process as well. So it's healthier for the relationship that they see counseling on the outside from someone who has an unbiased approach or a more objective approach to listening to both sides. Because listen, as much as I may be a life coach and a minister of the gospel and I've done marriage counseling and relationship counseling, I wouldn't do that for my relationship, right? Because I already have the title. That puts the other person, if they're not holding a title, at a deficit within the relationship, right? So they're always going to feel like they're being talked down to. And we often see that in relationships. The husband is either ignoring the wife because the wife is talking to him and she's nagging him, or the husband is the one doing the talking down to the wife. Those kind of dynamics always happen. So getting the outside help is healthier because now you have a person who can stand back from the position and not so attached and not so connected and listen, right? On Clubhouse, I don't know if you're familiar with Clubhouse, the most important tool I've heard and I've heard a lot of nonsense on that platform, and I've heard some good stuff. But the most important thing someone said is that we often listen to respond and not listen to understand. That's how people have our disagreements in relationships. One person, they're waiting for the rebuttal. They're waiting to the opportunity so that they can rebuttal, right? Or explain their position, defend their position, but they're not listening to understand the position of the other person.
Like playing a tennis match with emotion.
Oh my goodness. And it never stops, right? And then the relationship goes downhill. So that's why it's important to have it as a part of your timeline to see, maybe not the very first sign of conflict, right? But somewhere in between there where you start to notice some differences between your upbringing and their upbringing, can we work through this? And you try the conversation, you try talking and building, the bridges and negotiable bridges. And if that doesn't work, then you say, hey, would you be interested? I think we need to go see some help, right? And that necessarily doesn't always mean going to, a couples counseling. Sometimes it could be a book, a book on the matter or on the topic, and you read it together and share notes, right? Compare notes with each other. And that will help you understand the other person's perspective, right? So you read a chapter.
Be a podcast.
Yeah, or a podcast, right?
Or maybe a seminar. You take a seminar, a weekend
seminar
together. Right?
And you do the study notes, and you say, "Can I read yours? You read mine," right? And you kind of get the other person's perspective.
Interesting. Well, very cool. So now, Elaine, you have a thing to say. So say your
I was going to say, the thing is, going into it, if you're the one having an issue, the other person doesn't want to feel like they're on the defense, having to defend their behavior or defend their mindset or defend. So it can't always be the one person bringing up the subject and the other person reluctantly getting involved or reluctantly telling their story. Or so if there's an unbiased third party in the middle, then there's no, favoritism. It's not like the other person's being looked at, or there's not a big spotlight on one person as being the person who's bringing the majority of the problems into a situation. If there's stress coming into the relationship, then it's kind of like a shared endeavor as opposed to someone feeling like a finger being pointed at them. And that's important, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, if it's one thing that's dangerous to relate.
Ooh, that's dangerous right there. I think
so Joe got disconnected. He'll be back in a moment, but
yeah, I think his power did go out after all. Yeah.
I think here we go. He's come back already. So I'm really glad we're having this conversation about the timeline, because my next question is,
hi.
Sorry, I lost you guys there for a second.
Yes.
We knew you'd be back.
What I was going to say, one of the most dangerous things for any relationship is to focus on the problem. When you beat the dead horse over and over and over and over again, you're not solving anything. You're just addressing the negative in the relationship, right? Yeah. So that's what happens between the two people. That's why you should, it's important to go out and get the help, because you're going to get tools that will help build the relationship and rebuild, lines of trust, lines of communication, lines of understanding, so that you can, work back where you were.
Constructively.
So now.
Exactly.
Now, continuing, thank you for that. So continuing with the timeline. And so somebody's at the 3 C's and they realize because they watched this conversation, oh my goodness, there's nothing wrong with our relationship. This is just a stage that we're in. We're going to therapy. Things are good. Doesn't mean that this is a failure. This is actually a sign of growth. Good stuff. They feel better. Now, what is the next stage in the dating timeline? Do we wait for her to propose? Is that what happens?
Right. And that's the next stage. The next stage is engagement, right? And there's a different type of counseling that you go seek at this stage. It's not the same as the conflict resolution.
It's the pre-marriage counseling, isn't it?
This is the pre-marriage counseling, exactly. Because in the pre-marriage counseling, there are things that are going to be discussed that you may not have thought about because you were just in a relationship. right?
Yes.
Now you're moving to a different stage of relationship and seeking that help from someone who's been married and health in a healthy relationship, right? Not just married and disgruntled, right? Not
Oh,
not
we
an
get
Al
plenty of
Bundy,
advice.
right? Not with
Yeah.
Don't
Get
think
plenty of
not
marriage
going
advice
to
on
counseling is somebody who's bitter and divorced.
yeah,
they're
no,
Okay,
not the right person to
fine.
go to for advice. So as you enter
So
this
somebody who's
stage,
winning at marriage.
yeah, someone who's winning at marriage and successfully help other people win at marriage, right? They have a good track record. You go to somebody like that because they're going to, again, reveal some blind sides that you may not have thought about going into this next stage.
So what are some of the things
And
that get covered in pre-marriage counseling? What are some of the topics that get brought up?
family integration. You know, if you're divorced, you have kids, they have kids. So there is a dynamic of bringing family together. My discussion that I'm going to have this week on Sunday is dating culturally, you know, dating people from other cultures, ethnicities, nationalities. These are things that need to be, you know, at this stage, how are you going to navigate that? Right? Because when you introduce this, all these people living under one house, one roof, this isn't going to be the same story as, you know, everybody goes to separate quarters, right? You know, this is a whole different ball game. You know, at dinner table, it could be very awkward at dinner where you've got two kids, they've got three, or they've got three and you've got one. This whole thing could be a very different dynamic. You know, what types of food are we going to cook? You know, whose ethnicity is going to be predominant? Whose, religion, you know, are we going to practice?
Are we going to pray at the table? Are we not going to pray at the table? Are some going to pray and some
we take the shoes off at the door? You know, all of these things are things we're not thinking about, and we just rush right into it. Oh, he loves me or she loves me. Here's the keys, and we move in together.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you're dealing with the aftermath of all of these things that you never put in perspective, and you never gave time for it to breathe and to think and to talk about it, you know, intellectually as well as emotionally.
Interesting. So I just had a car analogy come to mind. It's like when you're very excited about that new purchase of a car, be it a new car or in this case a used car, because if people our age, there's no new cars anymore. We all use cars at this age with different variations of mileage and parts falling off.
Oh my goodness.
So you get excited
Some
about
are better
car,
maintained than others, right?
Car, but you don't prepare. You didn't check to see. Well, do I have a spare tire, and are the brakes in good condition? Have I ever driven this car in the rain or the snow, and how is it going to respond? and so, in a way, what I hear you saying is the pre-marriage counseling would be like, okay, we have this car. Let's take it to a mechanic and see what are we really dealing with here, and what things should we keep in mind, what things are working well, and what do we need to be mindful of, maybe not right away, but for the future. Am I going to need new tires in a couple of months? Do I need to get the radiator flushed? And so that you don't get any surprises at the wrong time.
Right. And I mean, this isn't a science, right? So there's no perfect relationship. But what you're doing is you're trying to remove all of the obstacles that you have control over, that are manageable obstacles, from not, surprising you in a relationship. And then the last stage here is the saving and investing. And for some people that varies, right? Because in the saving and investing stage, you've made the commitment, they've put a ring on it, right? You've agreed and you've gone to marriage counseling. So you guys are in this now. We're going to get married. Let's save for this wedding, right? Are we going to have an extravagant wedding? Is it going to be, family get together? Are we, doing a destination wedding? And now you're thinking about how do we commingle finances? Man, let me tell you, that right there is a topic that is so touchy. Commingling finances. You find out some stuff. You find out some stuff.
The real deal.
Right? And I mean, yeah, you've got to gone through the investigative stage and not have access to any finances, right? Because at that stage, you really don't need it. But now you're about to spend the rest of your life together, whether you're in your 20s or if you're in your 40s. You're about to hit your trailer to someone that you're going to trust with certain decisions, whether you're the financially astute individual or the other partner is a financially astute individual, right? And some people feel like, I've saved all of this. I don't necessarily want to put it at risk. I don't want to expose it. So there is some, really guarded areas where people don't want to share certain information. Or you go to the tax accountant and now you're starting to, put your accounts together and find out that, they went through bankruptcy, or, they had a conviction for fraud, some sort of financial, mutual funds, doing some shady stuff, right? You've got to have these kinds of discussions. Yeah,
credit card in their name.
Right, exactly. And if you don't have these discussions and start to think about this before, the wedding day, you don't want to deal with that after the wedding day, right? And some people will hold that as a secret. So that's why before you jump the broom, there should be a stage where you really plan this out. And in this stage, now we say, okay, are we going to live in whose house? Daycare, because these are all things concerning finances, right? Yeah. Living arrangements, daycare arrangements, where you're going to, fellowship, where you're going to do certain things, because you all want to make these decisions together and not separately, or let them organically just happen within the relationship. You don't want those surprises. It's healthier to have those conversations up front. And part of that is, you may decide to do a 5-year plan. I advise every man, if you're going to ask a woman to marry you, you should have a 5-year plan in place. Where do you see yourself leading this relationship? Even if you don't follow through on everything, you have a framework, right? You're not blown by the wind and carried from, through and fro. You have some sort of game plan in place.
At least an inkling. Very good. An inkling would be nice.
I think we could.
It builds security, right? Just imagine if you said, "Look, I value you so much. I value you and your children, their future so much that this is what I have sat in my time and thought about. I've thought about you and your children."
If you're talking about a man marrying a woman who has children, that's a big deal.
And it's huge. It's a thing today, right? Because unfortunately, divorce rates are so high, and many of the people that are dating right now are dating with kids. I mean, all the websites.
Anybody over 30, most people over 30, right? Is my clientele are.
There isn't one of the sites that I'm on. Not one of the sites that I'm on that when you read their profile, I have kids and they're with me for, every other weekend. That's part of the deal. It comes with the package, right?
Right.
So if that's the person that you're interested in, you've got to think that out. And, financially is a part of that, the obligation.
Right.
Yep.
Yes, there's lots to take into account. We could spend another hour discussing this stuff in detail. We appreciate you taking the time, Gerald, to come share some of this with us, a dating timeline. For those of you who are just joining us, you can go back and watch the show. And let's put the dating timeline on the screen one more time, just so people can take a quick glance at what it is. And that's the dating timeline from 0 to 6 months, all the way up to 3 years, leading to marriage on wedding day. Thank you, Gerald, for joining us and sharing that.
Can I ask Gerald a question?
Go ahead.
So it's always interesting to me, people who had dated when I was younger, if they dated for too long, not long enough. Do you counsel couples on how long is too long or not long enough to date before they become engaged or get married?
Yeah. And some of it I can hear and see through the issues and problems.
Careful what you say. My girlfriend may be watching this.
Oops, I forgot about that. Well, just in general, there's always exceptions to rules.
So some of
Go
it,
ahead, Gerald.
like I said, I hear based on what they bring to me, and then
Right.
I can say, okay, well, you probably skipped the 0 to 6 months, or
Right.
something in the 6 to 12 month area, and then I provide them with feedback. I don't
Right.
necessarily give them this guideline, right? This
Right.
guideline is for my singles ministry for individuals that are single. But I will provide some information from what I see and what I observe. And then I give them some tools to go back out and practice these things for the next time we talk, and see where they are. And if it's still something that's an issue because there's a holdout, right? Somebody's like, nope, I'm not changing. I'm stuck on this. This is who I am. They've drawn the line in the sand. Then I have to have them confront whether or not they're actually compatible, right? In the space of Christianity, we call it being equally yoked. If you
Right.
take an oxen when they work the field, or any animal that used to plow the field, they put two of them together and they yoke them across their necks, and they have to be equally yoked. Otherwise, you go in a circle, right? You're going in circles because it's unequal, and you're going around and around and around and around the argument table and the hamster wheel with no progress and no future for your relationship. So if you're not equally yoked, it plays a big part. And that is not just spiritually equally yoked. There's other parts of being equally yoked that are important. Hence our conversation this week. You have to understand culturally where that person is. I love you is only part of what it takes to be married. Right? It's only one of the ingredients for marriage. You can love that person all you want, but if you don't have the tools, or you don't have the necessary understanding of how to navigate familial issues, because you may be an outsider in that relationship, because your family is from Wisconsin, all of their family is in Boston, so you're always at their house. So you're now, entrenched in their culture, and you feel like the outsider. You're not welcomed in. So there's so much stuff that we don't think about, and we don't really give room for the relationship to breathe, to understand these things and make those observations, which is why, the timeline. So
Gotcha.
Great question, by the way. I hope I answered it.
Kind of. You and I will talk this off again, because I have dozens of questions for you, I'm sure. But
well, I think it's time to book a session with Gerald, Elaine, because we're out of time. Thank you for joining us and sharing your wisdom today, Gerald. It was awesome having you on as our guest today.
Yeah, thank you. This went fast. This went so fast. Thank you.
How do people get in touch with you, Gerald?
I'm on Facebook. You can find me as Elder G. You can find me as Gerald Manning. I also have a life coach profile that's called Trinity Life Management. I'm also on Instagram, as you can see, Elder G Man, which, that should change. It's Elder G now, something different. I changed it. But either way, you can look me up on Facebook, Instagram, hopefully soon coming to YouTube and a podcast near you.
Ooh, love it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining us. Elaine, your turn. Tell everybody where they can find you, the illustrious matchmaker and intuitive matchmaker.
That's right. Very intuitive. So I am on Facebook, and I have a website. So you can find me at dynamicintroductions.com, and same name on Facebook.
All right. Excellent. And if you are looking for me, if you are a gentleman who's ever been called the N-word, that is nice. If you've ever been called a nice guy by somebody you'd like to have kiss you or give you a hug, but instead she's giving you handshakes, I'm the coach for you, because I know the plight. I know what it's like to be treated more like a buddy than a possible lover. So if you want to figure out what those qualities are that make you be seen as more of a lover than a buddy, let's talk. You can find me at grichard360.com, or you can find me here on this page, the Astound Yourself Dating page. Send me a private message. Let's get in touch and come up with a plan for you. That's all the show we have for you today, everybody. We want to thank Gordon and Rosa for watching and commenting. I saw that Carla commented as well. Did I get everybody? And did you have something to add before we say goodbye to everyone, Elaine?
Trying to think. There's a singles dance at the end of the month if you like to dress up for Halloween in Chelmsford. I'll be posting that on the Facebook page. And I think you and I are going to do another event at Scoreboards. We had so much fun there last time. So it's cuffing season. So find your mate, get a date, and have someone to cuddle up with for the holidays. So it's going to get cold out there.
That's right. So
yeah, you want
Halloween is a good time to dress like a police officer. You can bring your handcuffs and find a mate. On that note, everybody, have a good night. Before I say something else that embarrasses Gerald. Thanks for watching the show, everyone. Good night.
All right, y'all. Good night. Be blessed.
Take care. Good night.